What's up everybody, Greg here with Lensprotogo and Lens Rentals, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're gonna be checking out the Aputure 300D Mark II. Now this light came out a little over a year ago, but it's still a widely popular light for filmmakers. And in this video, I wanna talk about some of the reasons that filmmakers are still deciding to go with this light over some of the other options out there that have Bi-Color as well as RGB. So let's go check it out. So just to cover some of the basic specs, if you've never heard anything about these lights before, they are an LED fixture, and the one I have here specifically, the 300D, is a daylight version of that. The white balance of this is 5500 Kelvin. Now with that LED, you get a super high CRI and TLCI of 96 and 97, which is absolutely fantastic. You get some really nice color rendition on this for your sensor. The housing of the light is built from an aircraft grade aluminum, so it is incredibly durable and really designed to withstand the rigors of being on set. With the Mark II version, they updated the yoke to be a little bit longer, so you actually can get a full 360-degree rotation, where before you were kind of limited with where you could aim the light. The yoke also has an incredibly strong handbrake on the side, which is going to lock the head in place no matter where you put it, even with modifiers on it like a softbox. This light is broken up into two separate parts. So on the head here, you actually have your LED assembly, and then you have some cooling and fans to keep that LED chip nice and cool. And then it goes down to the ballast, which is actually where all of the power and everything is coming from. On this ballast, you have the option to do V-mount, so you can power it from batteries. You can plug it into a wall using the Nutric True One Connect, which I'm doing right now. And then you have all of your controls. So the really nice thing about this is that you can get the head up and out of the way. You can have it way up on a stand, and you'll still have the ability to control it using this interface. The ballast comes with a nice paracord loop, which you can use to hang this on the stand. It also comes with a speed rail mount if you want to clamp it to the C-stand, or if you're doing it on speed rail on like some trusses and stuff overhead. The last thing I want to mention is the modifier mount that these Aputure lights use. Now these use a Bowens mount, which is a pretty universal mount across a lot of the photo industry and now into a lot of the video stuff as well, using those same softboxes and different light modifiers and reflectors. This makes it super easy to either get into the Aputure ecosystem if you already have a bunch of softbox lights, if you're coming over from a photo background and you already have a bunch of those modifiers as well, and if you just want to pick them up from different companies. You have a lot of options out there, from Westcott's to Bowens, Profoto. There's hundreds of different options out there, from doing strip banks to octaboxes and things like that. So now you have a little bit more background about the 300D if you've never heard about these lights before. Let's get into some of the reasons why people are still using this daylight only balanced light over some of the other options out there like Bi-Color and RGB. Now, besides the things I just mentioned, having super high color accuracy and a really solid output for a fixture that's fairly small, one of the biggest things that I think people are still using these lights for is this little Aputure remote. Now this allows you to control all of your units in 4 different groups, changing the intensity, turning them on and off. So if you're a one-man band, you can have 5 or 6 of these lights set up from the 300Ds, the 120Ds, and some of the other ones in their ecosystem. And that's going to allow you to adjust them all on the fly. So I can turn this light on or off. I can brighten it up just by holding the button. As you can see, it's getting super bright behind me. I can dim it all the way down. And you can do this with 4 different groups, A, B, C, and D. So this is a huge time saver for a lot of people, especially when you don't have the crew to have people manning lights just to change the intensity. You can do it super quick and easy on this remote. The next one is one that I kind of mentioned already, but using that Bowens mount, it allows you to have so many different options for modifiers, and it just is a really flexible system, and it makes it so much easier for photographers to move into doing some video work. The next thing is the Ballast, which uses V-mount batteries like I mentioned, and this allows you to power it remotely, so you don't always have to be plugged into a wall to get some really nice output and augment the sun if you're shooting outside. There's also a really nice interface on the Ballast, which allows you to control all of your different settings, changing your intensity, changing some of those effects and doing those different things on there, and changing the channel and group of each light for the remote to control. One of the biggest reasons I think people lean towards these Aputure lights is for the cost. Now this kit with the 300D, the head, the ballast, the carrying case, as well as the small little reflector, only runs about $1,100, which is super cheap for a video light, especially with this much output and this much color accuracy. Now for the cost of this light, you could get a few of these for the same price as one of those more expensive lights that are $3,000, $4,000, or sometimes even $5,000. And having all of these different lights allows you to have a lot more flexibility and being able to shape your scene with those different light sources. One of the reasons that I really like the LS series, the 300D, 120D, is for the form factor. They're really small and they break down really nice and travel really nice as well. The units themselves are fairly light and they come in a really nice compact traveling case, and you can also just throw them right in your bag. So you could bring a few of these on set and not need a bunch of grips to carry them in and out of location. One of the things that this light has, which isn't super useful for everyone, is stepless dimming. Now it's really nice because if you want to do some of those effects where you're fading on a light or fading it off, you're not going to see those incremental shifts in intensity. It's really nice and smooth from 1% all the way up to 100%. And this ties into some of the effects, which I'll talk about in a second, which makes them really nice and seamless and really feel organic. If you want to have a little more flexibility and control than what the Aputure remote can give you, there's also a really nice mobile app that you can hook up to your phone and connect over Wi-Fi to all the different ballasts of your lighting setup and have control with different groups and individual lights. You also have some control over some of the effects that we're going to look at. With this light, there is a bunch of built-in effects which are really nice to have. Though they are a little bit limited because it's only a daylight balanced light, you don't get any sort of color shifting in them. But there are some really cool ones like strobe, which just obviously flashes it on and off. You have a fireworked one, which kind of gives you these pops of light. There's an explosion one, which has a trigger button, so you can actually trigger when the explosion goes off, and it has a really nice fade of light afterwards. And it has a faulty bulb one, so it basically acts like the light's short circuiting, so it kind of flickers on and off if you're trying to do this grungier, kind of moody looking scene. Now these are obviously not going to be used every time that you're using this light, but they're nice options to have if you wanted to use them. The next thing is that the controls are not on the actual light. This really only has the LED chip and the processing, and everything else is done on the ballast like I had mentioned earlier. The reason this is so great is because it allows you to not have to have access to the actual head of the light. So you can have this rigged way up overhead, and you can have all the flexibility and control from either the remote or the ballast, which could be run down onto the ground, and it just makes it a lot easier and more efficient when you're shooting on set. So as you can tell, there are a ton of reasons why these lights are super popular and people keep coming back to them to use them on their productions. Now, looking at it and trying to find some of the downsides of it, there were really only two things that I found. The first one is that it's daylight only, which is pretty obvious, but this makes it so it's a little bit limited when you're trying to shoot in tungsten environments. Obviously, you can use gels, but you need to make sure that you have the right gels, and you need to find ways to hold it onto the actual lighting fixture. So you can do it, it's just a little bit more work, and with those gels, it's also going to cut some of the output from the light source. The second thing, which I kind of just mentioned as being a good thing for it, but it can also be looked at as a bad thing, and that's that the light and the ballast are separate. This means that you have more parts and more cables to keep track of. When you have all the controls right on the light, there's only one cable running out of the back of it into a wall. It just makes it a really nice light to work with, where this you have a little more setup and more things to deal with. But you get that flexibility of control, so it's really up to you whether you think this is a good or bad thing. If you want to try out the Aputure 300D Mark II for yourself, which I highly recommend you do, it's a fantastic light. Check out the links in the description below where you can go and learn a little bit more information about them. If you have any other questions, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for new videos every single week, and I'll see you in the next one.